Okay, on today's episode, I am speaking with Dee Hernandez. Dee is a Cuban-Canadian, Afro-Cuban jazz vocalist, singer-songwriter, and performer based in Brunswick. A couple of her tunes have recently been featured on CBC Music's Saturday Night Jazz, as well as The Block. You can find all her music and tour dates at her website, deehernandezmusic.com. Yeah, this was a really great chat. We covered a lot of ground, including her story from Cuba to Canada, the recording and writing process for her upcoming album, as well as some of the challenges involved with pursuing an artistic career. Okay, without further ado, here's my chat with Dee Hernandez. Well, thanks a lot for coming on the show, Dee. I appreciate you giving me some of your time.
Of course. My pleasure. Thank you.
So yeah, when you logged on there, we're using Google Meet, through the wonders of the internet. I was listening to your newest single, Used. And what I like about that tune is, so I'm a bass player first, and the bass line, when it kind of moves up into those higher notes, the higher register, I love the change in energy that decision brings to that tune.
Oh, I'm glad that you can notice that. I am, like most of my songs, I write them based off a bass line that comes to mind before even words come to mind, before actually chords are not very much of a thing, kind of like B.B. King that way myself until, jazz chords, just throw some jazz chords and everything will be fine. But if I have the bass line, I'm happy. And it's interesting because that you mentioned about the energy, because when I write music, it's all about the mood for me, it's about the feeling. And yes, of course, some complex stuff comes out. But for me, most of everything is to capture how the mood of the song and the message of the song through the actual instruments. And bass, it tends to be my to-go-to.
When you first come up with an idea for the song, you start with a bass line, or you hear a bass line?
Bass line is what I hear, usually a bass line. And I don't know, it could be a correlation with my love for hip hop. Like 90s hip hop had very bassy kind of sounds. My love for funk, which is very much a bassy kind of sound as well. But that's, for some reason, that just happens to be the first thing that comes to mind, and horn sounds as well.
Okay, that's a beautiful combo. Yeah, the 90s R&B. Sometimes, like, my wife used to listen to a lot of TLC, so that that kind of creeps back into my life now more than it did because I was pretty young in the 90s, so I didn't quite appreciate it.
Of course, yeah.
Yes. That's a cool influence.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that you can hear that. And John Good, which is the one playing that song on the bass, did a beautiful justice to it. So
yeah, that's very cool. Another thing too I enjoy about your music, and I kind of enjoy this about, so like Used is in English, the lyrics are in English, but some of the songs are in Spanish. And what's interesting is when, like, and I don't speak Spanish, so when I'm listening to the music and I can't understand the lyrics, it's interesting because it all comes down to the feel of the music, and you know what I mean? So I think that's what I really enjoy about your music, is that because I can't get any sort of opinion, or I can't really understand what's being said, so I just have to feel the music and kind of enjoy it or not.
Yeah, and first of all, thank you for that. That actually kind of gave me chills, because the music that I was really into when I lived in Cuba, mostly, obviously, older than Cuban music, was, as I mentioned, was English music that just come through the radio sometimes, or my grandparents played in their turntable. And I didn't understand anything that was being said. I think I mentioned this before somewhere else, but I even listened to Tupac. I listened to a lot of Ella, but I also listened to a lot of Nat King Cole, Whitney Houston. And there was something within their music and the way that they were able to project the feeling of the song that I didn't need it to understand any words. And that's why it is very important to me to always make sure that the music is the language, because I choose to, sing in both languages. And when I say I choose it, it's more like the songs choose to be, because I think a lot of times at the beginning of my writing process, or when I first really got into writing music, I was really into making sure I was able to communicate with people that were surrounding me at the time. And when I first came to New Brunswick and then later to Toronto, I was really in the Anglophone community. So I really didn't have, although I did have Latin American friends, the majority of people that I had communication with on the regular basis were people who spoke English. So I wanted to really write music for myself in the sense of, oh my gosh, look at me, I'm writing songs now in my new second language. But also it was a way to, without telling people how I was feeling and what I was going through, to project that through music without becoming so personal and getting into too much of deep conversations. And then as now with this album that I'm about to come out with and these singles, it is more about the trajectory of my life through, through a 16-year-old that came to Canada to these, we're not going to talk about my age, to this full-grown woman. So it's basically every song comes in the language that the experience was experienced, or, how I experienced life or that moment in that situation. And that's how the music comes out based on that. So if it was the experience where I was either a dream that I had in Spanish or English, the song will be on Spanish or English. It's just however they want to come out and channel through me.
Okay, I was going to ask about that actually, how you choose or how you choose which language you sing in, because I find that interesting too. And in New Brunswick, as you know, we're a bilingual province, officially French and English.
Yes.
So I find that fascinating in the francophone scene as well, when they choose to speak English in their music as well. So you say it's the experience. So do you hear?
For me, it's based on experience.
So you hear some experiences, and when you're going through an experience in your mind, are you talking to yourself in English and sometimes you're talking to yourself in Spanish?
That's exactly it.
Okay. That's neat.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And, like we culturally, there is differences no matter where we go. And that's what the beauty of the world is, that culturally we have different experiences, even though they could be the same experience, but is manifested different based on our surroundings. So like for me, one of the things that I found intriguing, for example, is having friendships or love relationship between a Cuban to Cuban when I was a teenager, but at the time as a teenager in Cuba versus a teenager to teenager here in Canada is a completely different thing. Just our love language could be completely different. At times in Cuba, just a look is understood. A gesture that I used to do with my nose when I first came to Canada, people didn't understand that. So learning behaviors and gestures and little words that are said, I was really intrigued how that worked. And I thought, why not write about those experiences? So because those experiences were in English when I came to Canada, that's how it's there. A couple of the songs in the album, as when they will come out, you'll hear it, but they were really they're all in Spanish, or and those in Spanish were really dreams that I had. There were dreams, and then I just, I'm one of those people that just overthink everything, because that's how my brain works. There's a million thoughts at a time. And I just sit down and try to understand the dream, because I believe that dreams are messages from the universe. So it's good to sit down and think about them. And that's really, one of my songs came out based on that. I couldn't sleep. I spent hours awake trying to understand my life, trying to understand one specific dream. And that's how the song came to be. So that specific dream just happened to be in Spanish, because it was a recurring dream that I had since I was a young girl. And then as an adult, I'm like, oh man, now that I look back and the experiences that I had, the encounters that I had with people, how my life has changed from A to B to C, I understand what I was having those dreams. That was, a message of not feeling secure, that, that uncertainties, all of those things. But because it started in Cuba, of course, the thought was in Spanish. Just as an example.
Have you noticed a pattern in your dreams that make that kind of like why some dreams are Spanish and why some dreams are in English?
I think I tend to go a lot to my childhood. And I think, I lived, when I lived in Cuba, we went through the 90s, really stuck with me was a massive change in my country at the time, like it's going right now, which is absurd. But and that experience through the political and economical changes in the country also manifested in my family life. You know, people were very busy trying to survive, trying to eat every day. And then because of those things, as much as your family can love you, there is not time that we sometimes have here for a child, right? So at times I felt completely, you know, like not protected, even though I was, but it's just the feeling that I had. So I noticed that I had a recurring dream of being alone a lot. And then funny enough, I chose to stay in Canada alone and create, you know, the family that I missed so much from Cuba here in Canada, right? To kind of, you know, to kind of not have that feeling that I had, even though I wasn't alone. I had people around me all the time. But I think this is, as a child, there sometimes when things are very complex around you, they either come through dreams or through thoughts or in other ways. For me, it was through dreams and through music.
And do you journal your dreams? Like, do you?
I do.
Okay.
I journal.
Yeah.
I do. And it's funny because I just came back to journaling again. I actually have a whole pile here that you don't want to see of a mess beside me of things that I had when I was a kid in Cuba that I was able to gather. And one of the things, which was not many, one of the things was a journal. And then I came to Canada and then I started a new one because I'm one of those people that start something and don't finish it. I'm getting better at it, but I start with one book. I'm like, I don't like this book anymore. I'm going to start another book, and the other one just stays there. And then I came to Canada and started journaling my life, and then I kind of stopped. And now that I went back to it in the past year and a half or so, I've noticed that the way that I was able to organize my thoughts, like I mentioned before, because I have so many of them at the same time, was through journaling, because I was able to reflect on the day before or the day of. And the dreams are one of those things that I really find them very valuable and important, because, as I said, I think they're messages or guidance a lot of times, right? So there was a time that I felt like my dreams I couldn't remember them, and that really stressed me out, because then I'm like, okay, why am I supposed to do that? Because I kind of, it's like almost like I waited for them to be present, and all of a sudden they're not there. I'm like, okay, now I'm in trouble. You know, I made some changes in my life that allowed me to kind of dream again. And even what we're doing right now, I honestly believe that I'm dreaming. As weird as that is. But, you know, yes, I definitely, journaling, I think, is important for many of us. And we always think, like, just need to sit down and just make this beautiful. It's just basically it's like talking to yourself, talking to your higher self, you know, just expressing something that sometimes it's not easy to express through words. But when you sit down and just let the calm come through, which doesn't happen often in this world, it's really easy to get on our phones or look and watch TV, or just, you know, not really enjoy the peace, the fragments of peace that are given to us. The best thing, honestly, I think, is writing how you felt that day. What was important? What really stuck out to you? What is something that I perhaps could work on myself for, you know, to be a better person for everybody else around me, perhaps, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I turned to journaling during a difficult period of my life, and one thing that I realized when I started is that I didn't need to worry about typos or punctuation or proper spelling, or it just kind of it just was this huge release of just like, you can do whatever you want, like you're doing it for yourself.
That's it. And I mean, the world is so heavy. I mean, we talk about it now, more than ever now. I think the world has been heavy for a lot of people for a long time. We just have the access to the overload of access of information that not always good information to always have access to. Mm-hmm. I think that journaling really gives you the access to your inner self that a lot of times we just don't want to have access to, because we sound crazy, or we sound too cookie, or we don't sound like everybody else. And honestly, that's one of the things that I really had to work on myself, because at some point of my life, I wanted to be like the kids around me who were playing. I wanted to be like the teenagers who just were home and playing sports, or, you know, like I wanted to be like everybody else. And the reality is that we could be, but I'm not. And you have to be happy with the way that you are, because you are that gift to your parents. You're that gift to a brother. You're that gift to that friend, because you are who you are, not because you're like them. And journaling, I think it gave me the access to understand that and be okay with that. And being able to write the songs that I write, because they are really the experiences that I never perhaps told somebody. And I'm saying it and sharing it through music.
Do you find, in terms of writing music, are you drawn towards like negative experiences or positive experiences more than one or more than the other?
So I went through a lot of changes and quick changes in my life. And at the beginning, they were all very positive. And then I eventually got stuck in this idea that I couldn't get out of certain situations. It's almost like you're trying to go against what is here right now, what your life is right now. And I think that the moment that we are able to accept where we are in our life right now is okay, it will be easier. But I didn't accept it, right? It's almost like I saw it as a bad thing, and it wasn't. I mean, now I look back, my gosh, if it wasn't for those experiences, for my children at a young age, for all of those things, I would not be even half the woman that I am today. And I'm very proud. I really like myself. I think I'm pretty cool. And, so during that time, I, for some reason, focused more on the negative. And now looking back, a lot of negative things followed me because I was so focused on this small negative situations and not looking at the bigger picture. Like, I'm healthy, I have beautiful children, I am in the country that I brought myself here through music. Like, not many 16-year-olds can say that they're following a dream and they're doing it. I'm not recommending to any 16-year-old to go to another country by themselves. This is highly unrecommended. Do not do it. But if that's what you're called to do, don't say that Dee told you. And so the day, I remember I was writing a lot of negative songs, and I almost felt like I was, not to knock on Adele, but I felt like I was Adele for a moment. Like, I was crying about everything through my music. And I remember, even though the musicality was awesome, there was nothing to dance about it, just because the way that I wrote the songs, it was more crying and whining about my life versus telling a story and seeing how that could influence a positive outcome. And a friend of mine, I still, he plays it. He has played with me in the past. Dave Bartlett said, he said, Dee, like, you need to write some positive things. And I remember saying to him, I was like, well, I'm not experiencing very positive things. It's like, well, you're breathing. I was like, man, right? The simple little things. So after that, I decided to make changes to myself. I don't know how I did it, because I just went with the flow, but I know that I just made small changes within myself. And I started looking at how I used to view the world when I was younger, right? Like, I always saw there was something more. So obviously there has to be something more. And my songs started becoming more a message of, this is what I went through, but thank goodness I went through it, kind of deal. And most of them now are very, very positive. Used technically as a negative song. It's talking about, you allowing somebody to use you. But at the end, it's not, because it was the moment. There will always be somebody who will try to take more than what you have, or whatever you're given may not seem enough for them. And there will always be somebody who will try to manipulate you in some way. But the message of that is, I was able to eventually recognize that. And then I was able to fix me, which was loving myself, understanding how much I'm given, how important my love is, how wonderful I am, and, how naive I was to give it to somebody who didn't deserve it. Right? So it is really a positive thing. It's an awakening for me that, recognizing that, the manipulation was right there, and I'm able to see it. And the music and the song is super danceable. So for me, it was really, if you look at it in a different way, it could be a negative song, but it's really a celebration of the vision of the awakening, the knowing that, you can do better than this. It's time to go. And there's always somebody for somebody else. Right. So,
and do you have to, so when you're relaying this negative experience, but putting a positive twist on it, do you have to be conscious of that? Like you don't want to accidentally make it a negative song? Like, I'm kind of curious more about that approach.
I think I don't try to do anything. I just let it be. Okay. I think right now I'm just, I think I was in like the early songs, which we heard, like Used was one of my early songs. But I think it was a moment of transition, right? Like of moving above things versus staying dormant and in that same situation. I think those early songs, it was actually like a shadow message. It was like somebody holding my hands like, girl, come on, you can come up. Let's go, right? So I don't try to not, I mean, if it's going to be a negative song, it's a negative song. People go through negative things every day. It is important to me for my songs to become somewhat of a lesson and a message or a warning to somebody else. Like, this happened to me because I wasn't listening to myself. I wasn't loving me. So maybe this can serve you as a lesson of like be cautious, love you first. And then the right people will come into your life. So I don't think I try not to be negative. I think just right now, I am really focused on the positives. And that's what is coming out.
I like that. That's nice. It's nice to, because it is easy to get stuck writing and being artistically creative in the negative. For whatever reason, that's an attractive approach to artists.
Yes. And I mean, I spent some time without making music because of it. So now, like, after, I think a lot of bad things happened during COVID, but for many artists who had time to reflect, like myself, it gave me a sense of, I'm like, how lucky am I, to feel music again? Because at some point I had zero interest to create music. I didn't want to be around people who made music, period, because I felt like music was dying. And why was that? Because I was not listening to good music. I was focused on what is played on the radio every day, what was being shown on TV every day. I was watching shows that was pure negativity and women and men destroying themselves with messages of lost and anyways, I was consuming all that. So therefore, that's what was in my mind. And so the day that I was able to realize, I'm like, oh my goodness, what you're consuming is really affecting you. That was the time that I was able to consume things that actually feed my soul. And that's what I want to provide really through my music. I want to be that food. I want to be the consumption that people listen to and that actually decalcifies your pineal. Am I saying that? Pineal gland? Anyways, yeah. Yes, thank you. And I want to be that music. I want to be that for older people because that's what my music is for me. So
okay, I kind of get those like positive dancey vibes from Danzón. I really like that. Yeah, I really enjoy that song quite a bit.
Yeah, Danzón was super cool because it was honestly, I was just chilling. And then I said, and I should write more songs in Spanish. And just happened to be scrolling, consuming on my phone. And I saw El Tata doing one of, like a cover on the drums of one of Bad Bunny's songs. And then it was pretty cool because I'm not very technologically inclined. So he went from one camera to another. And it was just really cool the way that he put the whole reel together. I was like, man, this guy's really cool. And he's also Latin American. I mean, we don't have a huge population of Latin Americans in the area, neither of musicians. So I'm like, I got to contact this guy. So I sent him a message on Instagram, really creepy. I said, I don't know if you know me, but I'm Dee Hernandez and, I'm a musician. And I feel like you could produce a song that I started writing. that you could, take. And he just got into the challenge. He never produced anything for anybody, never produced, at all, especially not my type of music and what I really, my style. But he was really open to work, and we worked beautifully together. And Danzón is such a, if I could have done another video again, which I love the video that Mackenzie did, it would be in Cuba. Like, it just has that romanticism of old Havana, of the love for somebody, the love for, for your best friend, for your husband or your wife, for the universe, for God, for all of the beautiful things that really have translated in my life in the past, 20 some years. Is really a celebration of the beauty that I'm finally able to see again.
Cool. Yeah. That's really beautiful. Yeah. That's all I have to say about that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, El Tata did a great.
He did such a good job.
Yeah, he did a great job. Yeah, it's a great. He produced 3 songs with you, or was that just the?
Yeah, he produced. Yeah, okay. All 3: Ponte Pa Ti, Danzón, and 16. And 16 is really about my, my immigration process when I first came to Canada.
Okay. One thing I wouldn't mind asking about, and
of course,
I don't know if this is naive or whatever the right word is for me, but when I think of Latin music and Cuban music, it feels very rhythm based. So I'd be kind of curious how your opinion of when you first came to Canada, is rhythm in music kind of not respected as much as it is in Latin music? Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, there's it's definitely a tradition, right? Like, it's a cultural association when it comes to the rhythmic patterns. There's ancestral connection when it comes to the drumming and that. And maybe perhaps I'm not sure, because it's kind of like when you're playing jazz, when it's a jazz drummer and understands the patterns for jazz drumming, and understands the music. And I think when it comes to Latin music, you just have to understand the music very well. Like, knowing the guaguancó clave and the son clave is extremely important for Latin music. Like, and also understand that, where it really come from, it came through Africa. And of course, some of the Tainos and Aboriginals as well, for many other Latin American countries, including Cuba, I'm sure. We do respect it. We respect it so much that sometimes it could take you away from expanding music a little bit, which I tend to do, and explore other things within Latin music, which sometimes can be a bit of like, for some musicians, especially those who traditionally either studied much more than I musically, or who are very much focused on, preserving our music, which is a given as well. And I find like when it comes to Latin music, we got to be very careful. I feel, it's almost like, I don't want to knock on any genre of music, but I feel like a jazz musician can play pop very easily. Like, that's not a big deal, right? But to be a Latin drummer, you need to do your homework, because very easily, if I had a musician that doesn't have the understanding of certain Latin patterns, it would just completely destroy the song. And if a musician who understands Latin music listens to that, my career could very easily be in the garbage, right? So yes, the respect for traditions and understanding of Latin rhythm is extremely important in Latin music. And I don't know if in some other genre of music is as respected and it needs to be as understood.
When I think of like some Western music, the drummer may be dancing around the beat, like playing in and out of the beat, but when it comes to getting recorded, they kind of like disrespect that and just click it to the grid, track it to the grid and put it all perfectly in time. but when I'm counting along to your songs, maybe it's in 4/4 time, but the beats that are being hit are being.
It's the syncopation.
Yeah.
The syncopation is important, and not everything is on one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's the things in between that makes it interesting, that makes it rich. And, that was one of the things that I really wanted to go back to. Because sometimes you simplify your music for other people to listen to it, that it kind of loses its essence. And to me, it was extremely important to go back without losing my essence, because, I think that's what makes me interesting musically, is that I'm able to expand and explore other things within Latin music and other genres of music that I really love and respect as well. It is very important to understand where the one is. So for me, it was important to go back to my roots. And that's how John Bailey was able to assist me a lot with that. John went and studied in Cuba, and he actually has a great relationship with musicians that I went to school with and traveled the world with, or traveled not the world. I wish I would travel the world, some parts of the world with. It really, that's why he's the musical director of this album, because it kind of held my hand in explaining what I wanted to do. And, I went to music school for like 2 years, right? And everything else that comes naturally. But when I want to explain it to another musician who not necessarily the line music comes naturally, it's important that somebody who understands both things, naturally and technical, to be able to inform the other musicians what I'm looking for. And John was really good at assisting me with that. I think going back to my roots, it is something that I'm on a journey more than ever right now, and exploring things that, because I left so young, there's so many things that I didn't get to explore and learn of the culture and the music, that through music is almost like taking me through that journey. And I just really want to showcase how beautiful and how rich Afro-Latino culture is. Because a lot of times when we see TV, they're giving you a completely diluted version of what it is. And without losing, again, my essence and true to myself, I want to kind of take listeners through that journey, but in a way that is also understood without completely being diluted and simplified so much. So making accessible music, making accessible good music. That's the purpose.
That reminds me of, I interviewed an acquaintance of mine who he was born in Canada, but he moved back to Iran to play jazz music a few years ago. And it was the same sort of thing, you read about Iran in the news, especially now, but this was before the whole situation. And it wasn't until I spoke to him and he was playing jazz and explaining how they had shows in cafes and kind of the relationship they have with the women who were in the scene there too and everything. And it just kind of like opened my mind a bit to be like, some of these different cultures are misrepresented almost criminally in the way they're misrepresented in the news and in Western society.
Yeah. And I mean, I also I'm very passionate of the idea of, somebody said, who was it that said, it's like, you're a Cuban, but you're like an all-terrain Cuban. I'm very flexible, and it's just because my love for other cultures and other sounds, and not just the one that I grew up with. And, because I bring my roots, but I also learned so much, like most of my growth happened here. And I find it beautiful how, we can be a Cuban from Canada, because you have intertwined so many cultures. And in Canada, we have so many cultures. Like when I lived in Toronto, I got to experience art that I never thought I was able to experience, sounds from Iran, sounds from, every country in Africa I could imagine. And I through my music, you can hear those little elements, right, of other places that I have experienced and other sounds I have experienced. And just like me, I'm sure there's many, many other people. And I'm talking even like, Canadians who are born here, like my children, right? if they become musicians, or they would also have a different perspective of what Cuban music could sound like, and what, Canadian music could sound like as well, just because they have been exposed to me, and they have been exposed to music of my ancestors, and they have been exposed to music that is happening right now, in Canada and around the world. So I think it's beautiful that we are able to showcase how expensive music can be based on location, but also based on ancestry.
When you were kind of, I don't know if revisiting is the right word either, but did you have to do a deep dive into Cuban artists and discover any kind of hidden gems that you may have missed out on because you moved away at a younger age?
I do that all the time. Like, I'm constantly, and I do that even with my family, because it seems like we don't have a long history. Like, I only knew up until my grandparents. Don't know anything else. And my grandparents didn't talk about their lives. And it was just a very, very hush-hush. So I do that with my personal life. I'm in that journey. I just want to know more than what we were given. And with music, I do the same thing. With this album, I wanted to go back to my roots the way I feel them, right? Like, for example, my first single, Odumile, is very much Afro-Cuban, chachalo kafum, which is basically, a rhythm that we use in order to honor an orisha. And not that I was exposed much into that spirituality, but I feel that is spirituality through that rhythm. And my mother was going through an experience with cancer. And through that experience of cancer, I was going through a spiritual experience myself in order to find the light for my mother. And that's how I felt at that time. So I wanted to bring that rhythm in. How I dove into that is because I know the rhythm in my head. And I said to John, this is what I hear. Kuta, 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 kuta. He already knew exactly what rhythm it was without me having to dive into the music, which I could have done. I could have just gone and dove into music and tried to, find what rhythm is that called and other artists. But I don't want to also be influenced by older musicians. That's the whole idea of being who I am. I listen to a lot of music, but I want to be as Dee as possible. So, yes and no, I guess, because I'm always looking for older music and new music at the same time. And I love people who innovate. I love music who expand. I love artists who can expand rhythms and can expand the genre of music. But I really was not looking for that. I was really looking for it to sound as authentically how I hear them in my head. And not always, if you are somebody who has never been exposed to Cuban music, even if I did that with my, like I did that, you wouldn't know because you've never been exposed. So it was extremely important for me to work with musicians that understood that rhythmically. And John was there for me. So that was a blessing. And if not, then I would have had to go, obviously to Toronto or Ottawa to find percussionists who understood my language.
Maybe you could talk a bit more about the role of the musical director. John, you mentioned John Bailey, correct? Mm-hmm. Just because I feel like some listeners may not really understand how important that could be, or how that could be like a light bulb switch getting turned on when you come across the right person.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, before we recorded the album, because how I start writing my music is just the piano's right here. I just play piano and I do the bass line and then I record it. I don't write it down. I don't chart, by the way. I can read music. I just prefer not to because that's not my forte. And I send it off to the musicians. And then we would get together and it's like, Dee, is this what you hear? Right? With having John on board, I surpass that part. I go through John first and, I send him the songs. And a lot of times when I was writing some of the songs for the album, I would send them like in a group chat on Facebook. I would send them what I was writing, like what I was doing on the piano. And then I would just saying what the rhythm that I hear in my head. And then I would go through John again and say, okay, this is what I hear, right? When we went to the recording, John already had his parts chart. He has the chart for the drums, and he obviously had some ideas as well. And when it came to recording, we had Huey Lord on piano, and we had John Good on bass. And when it comes to the horn sessions, I sang the horn sessions and I sent them to Joe Miller. And Joe Miller basically does that and adds much more, because he's like, just like you, he would do kind of like an interview of, for example, the song and where that song came from. And then he would kind of put a little bit of himself with it, right? So that's what I love about this recording. It's not just me. Yes, I write the songs, and I tell them the history of the song, and then they bring the emotion that they understand through that communication that I have with them. So when we are at the studio, John was the one who was able to basically musically explain what I'm looking for from the bass player and from the piano player. Especially these are people who also are not versed on Latin music. But the beauty part of that is that they're also versed on R&B very well. They're versed on soul. They're versed on funk. And those are things that are very important to me in my music as well. And then I contacted Sylvia Pupo, and then Sylvia Pupo is a pianist, a Cuban pianist, fantastic. And then he put the Cuban flavor in there. So John's job was to make sure that what I had in my head is actually verbalized properly to musicians. And it comes out tight, and it comes out on time and understood and musically respectable by everybody, including musicians. Because as much as we don't want to say it, to me, it's extremely important that when a musician listens to my songs, they're like, "Ooh, that's the stuff," right?
Yeah.
Versus I'm like, she's all right. They're okay. Like being okay is not an option. So John's job was quite large, especially in the studio, because he also has an ear that I don't have. He listens to things that it would take me a little bit longer to get. And as you know, we have to pay for studio time, and studio time is expensive. So his job was not only to make sure that everything sounded as it sounded in my head, but we also did it at a time that was, that is not going to cost us more than what we had. And, he did such a good job. He really did. Like I felt completely understood, and so I'm so happy that we were able to record something with very minimal money. But I think the work that we are doing is extremely important. To say that it's coming out of New Brunswick, I'm telling you right now, I don't have any words to explain the satisfaction that I feel that I have. Like to say that I'm creating this music here, that I didn't have to go to Toronto, that I didn't have to go to Montreal, that I didn't have to move anywhere else. That I'm doing that from right here. So yeah, John's job, it started right before even recording was from the beginning. I started writing these songs. And I mean, a lot of the songs as well were already written. And he kind of, he would call me on a call on Messenger. And it's like, okay, this is what I'm thinking. Is this more like where you wanted to go? And so we had that communication. And then when we went to the studio, we knew exactly what it's supposed to sound like.
So a lot of trust involved for sure.
A lot of trust involved, but a lot of communication prior to it as well.
That must feel validating when you see CBC picking up a couple tunes to spin on their programs, right?
It does, because how we were talking about the negative thoughts. I believe that nobody wanted to listen to me at some point. Like, who would want to listen to this mumbo jumbo? Because it was, for the longest time, I also had the lack of confidence that is it Cuban enough? Yes, it's Cuban enough. I'm Cuban. Is it, is it funk enough? Yes, it is. We create funk. Is it Latin jazz? Yes, it's Latin jazz. But for the longest time, I just almost like I was afraid of not getting the validation or people not liking it. for some reason versus starting to make music for me first. And that's where everything changed. But yes, it's beautiful to see CBC doing that, and not just in New Brunswick, like, national airplay. Like that's a big deal. And I think it started with the believing in myself. Also started with people involved in the project also believing in me and in the project. And that is the first validation really that I needed, musicians wanting to play with me and play this stuff. And knowing that this road is extremely hard because we're not playing conventional music. Like, we're not playing pop, we're not playing rock, we're not doing Celtic music, and especially on an area like this. And then when you go into the national wide, like, we are not in Toronto, we are not in the big cities, which you tend to get more opportunities of networking with the right people that perhaps want to play your songs, or just the fact that you're in their faces more often, that, that they won't want to play the song because they see you every day. But most importantly, because I'm doing something that is uniquely me and still being recognized for that work that I do. And, don't get me wrong, like, sometimes I wonder, like, why this festival is not, why are they not asking me to play? And, that little bad thought and that voice comes to mind, but I'm like, no, I now have the tools to, like, shut that voice away, and realize that I'm not for everybody, and that's okay. That's fine. And there will be a time that they will be knocking on my door and I'll be too busy. That's just how it is. But yeah, it's quite gratifying. And for me it is, but I also look at it in the perspective of, like, the musicians as well. I'm like, how cool is that I believed in this girl's music and I'm part of it and I helped create this. And now it's getting recognized the way that it is.
It's always interesting when an artist or the experience of being more true to yourself, or like you decide to stop trying to please others or present something that you think people will like, and then that's the moment where the artist starts to get more attention.
And we hear it all the time.
All the time.
That's the funny thing. We hear this all the time. Like, you hear in every single interview. I remember hearing this often. But I think the thing is that you don't know, if you don't know what self is, how can you be?
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, if you're still going through, like, what am I doing? And then nobody else, you can't create anything. So it starts with, like, knowing, like, that you are awesome, that what you're creating, you like it. And the second that you like it and you feel happy and excited and you can't wait to share it with somebody else, like, then that's the song, versus let's sit down in a room and try to make a hit. Don't get me wrong. I sometimes wish I could do that because I'd be eating. I wouldn't be the starving artist that I am. But for me, have my soul intact is so important, that creating music that comes from experience, from feeling, from being as human as possible, to relate to the everyday human is so important that, I don't think I would change that for the world.
Is that maybe the story of the album title, Deshecha? Hopefully I said that right, but.
And yeah, Deshecha, which means undone. I'm shedding all the old skin. I'm getting rid of, like, for the longest time, I was like, man, if I'm never able to show this to people, like, I feel like coming to Canada and going through all those experiences and not seeing my mother for 20 years and not continue learning about my own culture and not being around my family, forgetting friends, because I forgot friends and people's names was in vain, that all those sacrifices were for nothing. And I can finally say that I did it. Like, we did. It's here. Like, I have a box here full of records waiting for me to tell the world that they're here and look at it, right? It was important to me to let all that weight off my shoulders and, let the music breathe.
And how does it feel to pursue this career or this artistry as a mother, like with children in the picture?
Crazy. There's so many. Yeah, it's crazy. I have 3 and they're all completely different ages and they're all going through completely different things. And, as parents, we have a perception of what life is. But as children, they have a completely different perception what life is to them. So how can you relate to them in 3 different stages, And significantly now, I'm going through a completely, I'll talk about it some other time, but it's a quite heavy question because, you question if what you're doing is selfish all the time. But I remember one time where I stopped making music thinking that I was doing good by just being mom. And I wasn't. I was miserable most of the time. And that was selfish because I was miserable in the sense of like a huge part of me I was suppressing. So at the same time, I was miserable because I think deep inside, I knew I was being selfish to my children in the sense of not showing all who I am and who, like not showing them who you are is extremely selfish thing to do. And I think I also took away a lot of, what mothers could look like, Because my grandmother was a woman who she was the one who raised me, even though my mom, was there too, but she was a young mother. And I remember my grandmother just being wife and mother, and that was beautiful, but she wasn't happy. And I honestly believe that if we show our children all of the things that we are capable of doing, then when they're in their journey of being adults or in the transition of being adults, they believe in themselves a bit more, right? Because that's what they've seen. So knowing that I'm not dead, that I think, what do I know? But no, knowing that I'm not dead, let me pinch myself.
I got news for you.
I have an opportunity to show them all who I am, but that comes with a lot of balancing acts, right? And that can be tricky. The nice thing is that I think for mothers, it's important, not just because I'm a musician. I think mothers always need support. This idea of that a mom and a father, that's the family, I don't believe in that. I think that individualistic idea is very unachievable. And that's why I say it takes a village. There's a saying for a reason. It should take a village. It should take a community. It should take friends. It should take close relatives to make a child, grow strong and efficient and a beautiful member of society. And I do have that. I have a really good support system, which, I think I was lacking at some point of my life. But I have it now. So I have the opportunity and the privilege to show my kids all who I am now. It's just, again, there's always those thoughts that come and like to invade the mind and say, okay, well, but you're gone 2 times this month, but I mean, there's mothers who are gone more than that and their children are fine and they're happy and all those things. It is a difficult one, but at the same time, like not last year, the year before, I took my youngest one touring with me in the East Coast, and that was so cool. She got to experience things that, that I wish I would experience at that age. She was seeing mom through the day, and then sometimes mom was cranky, and then mom was happy, and then mom was making music, and she was part of it, and she was dancing. She experienced all the emotions that are completely normal to feel versus always seeing happy mom. Like that's not realistic. So she saw the complex of reality. And then she'll be able to have those tools when she get up and she's a woman. She's able to understand that, there will be terrible, stressful moments, and then you'll sing and then you'll feel good, or you do what you love and you'll feel good. And then, you go back to, the nature of being a woman and a mother and a
all those things that also brings happiness and also brings stress, and that we're not overwhelmed. I think a lot of times, like, the overwhelming feeling is the fact that we just have an expectation of that is unrealistic. So, but it can be difficult. It's a balancing act, but it's a beautiful experience at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's a glimpse into the real world for sure, because life isn't easy and there is stress and there's sacrifices and trade-offs. And I kind of like that you mentioned, it takes a village, which maybe that's a saying that's being lost in time right now.
100%.
And I find it interesting when folks want to focus on individualism, like just take care of myself. It's all about me. But then they're also like, they kind of forget that society is literally built around a giant population of people. So you can't have rugged individualism and also a well-built society. I don't see how those things can coexist. So
for me, one of the things that, even though I wanted to be here when I first stayed in Canada, that was one of the things that I felt very lonely. And I mentioned this in Cuba, but coming here, that's when I realized, oh my goodness, I wasn't lonely at all. Just people were busy, just like everybody else, right? But like back home, if my grandparents were working, if my mother was at work and I was at school and I would come home, there was a whole building full of people who I could go to their house and say, hey, listen, nobody has come home, I'm hungry. Or there was a complete building community of people that if I was playing outside, playing hide and seek, and I was being unfair to another child, they'd be like, that's not right. And my mother would never dare to come then, later and say to my neighbor, hey, you did that wrong, right? If anything, would be thank you, right? So when I came here, even though I made really good friends and I've met the best people, honestly, I've made a beautiful family, especially in St. John. I still at times felt that there was always that community feeling a bit missing. For a lot of kids, I saw a lot of children just like, mom and dad, and they didn't have like the uncle and the aunt, and I'm sure they had it, but it just wasn't, I don't know. It was a completely cultural shock for me. It completely changed. And then, the idea of that, once you're a mom, it's just you. It was crazy too. But again, I also had help from my kids' grandparents. But, back home, I would have had my aunt and I would have had my cousin and I would have had, so things like that, that made me realize that, I wasn't as alone as I thought I was back home. It's just adults have things to do.
Yeah.
And perhaps I was a little needy as a kid. But yeah, it really does take a village. And I mean, but we say that, but we also see there's a bigger size of that. Like when I moved to Toronto and I was coming back to New Brunswick, I had to move to a different community in Toronto. And that was this huge building face to face. And like huge building here, huge building here. And I met so many people through that building that they realized that I was a young girl who's about to give birth, and I was still finishing high school. And just people took upon themselves to like be a friend, like older people. And like once in a while they would knock on my door and they would bring me something to eat. And for example, in school, I had the guidance counselor. Like she was more than a guidance counselor. She was a friend, who would, after school, just like, you have to sing tonight. Are you sure? Do you want me to go pick you up? There were people like that everywhere. So I was blessed enough to have that presence, to have people who understood that it took a village. I just wish that it was more on a massive scale, especially right now. We see a lot of young people hurting. There's a lot of young people, in drugs and alcohol. And I honestly believe it's just the lack of that village.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm lucky too to be from a couple. My wife's family is really close, and my family's close too. Even though most of them have moved to Ontario, but so we're both lucky to be from that situation. But I see it as well. I feel it, and I see it. I think I do anyway. That some of that is unfortunately missing from a lot of households, perhaps.
Yeah. But I mean, there are people who understand that. So let's just, I'm hoping that kind of spreads.
For sure. Well, that's a beautiful thing about the music community. Music is people who might not have that experience at home can find that in the arts and music community. And that's a story you
Yes.
hear from time and time again, whether it's punk rock, heavy metal, hip hop, country,
No matter.
people that kind of feel like they don't have a community, a group to hang out with, find the music that
Mhm.
that brings that together. So
Yeah, I think just because artists, we are weird,
we are
right? Like we're weird people, so we need a community to understand us.
That's hilarious. I am the weird one in my family, so I guess that tracks. Yeah,
Me too.
that's funny.
We do. Me too. Just sitting there, just thinking. Like my mother lives with me now after her cancer experience, and like sometimes she sees me sitting there, she's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm just. There's many things happening in my head right now, so I'm just quietly sitting here, you know. But I'm just glad it is. It's beautiful to have a community that that understands, and you have little things in common, not completely, but just little things in common, which the funny thing is that we all have so many things in common, regardless where we come from, that I think if we understood that, or if we are open to understand that a little bit more, we would be much more united. But it's the whole mother thing it's a complex situation, 100%.
Well, I think that's a beautiful place to end it. We've been chatting for about an hour, and we should
Oh my God.
we should end it on positivity because yes, it's challenging.
Yes.
But I mean, it's a long term. The game. It's a long game. It's playing the long game. Let's say so.
Yes.
It's good to show that kind of that stress is real. Life can be challenging,
Yes.
but life is very rewarding. You should be
Very much
be who
so.
you are. Pursue your dreams responsibly if you can. Those are all great messages.
Yes. There's somebody told me once, it's like, you'll feel good the day that you exercise your greatest calling as many times as you can, the best way possible that you can, and without any expectations in return. And I honestly try my very best to do that with music. I try my very best being that with as being a mother, as a daughter, as a wife, as a friend, and as a provider of music. That's literally what I try to do, because I have many callings. It's not just music. And all those callings, as long as you do them the best of your ability and you exercise it whenever you can, I honestly think we're feeding our souls and everything will be okay.
That's absolutely beautiful. That's a beautiful way to wrap it up, Dee. Maybe we could where should we send people who want to check out your music and learn more about you?
Yeah, so I have a lot of things going on. I'm going to be hitting the road very soon, starting on July 1st. Everything can be found at www.deehernandezmusic.com. My music is available in all streaming platforms, but most importantly in Bandcamp. You can go ahead and purchase my music there if you want to support me directly, because I have children, as you know, that I have to feed. And I also have music that I want to continue sharing with everybody. So if you go to that site, you'll be able to find my music. You'll be able to find where I'm going to be next. Maybe I'm going to be in your city very soon, which I'm pretty sure I am. And I'm looking forward to seeing you while I'm on the stage.
And if they sign up to the mailing list on Bandcamp, which I believe is set up there, they'll find out when Deshecha is coming out later this year.
Yes. Yeah, you can do that, and you can also sign up on my website, which will do everything else automatically. And I tend to just give people heads up, and most people who are on my mailing list are the first ones to know about anything that I'm doing before I provide the information to the rest of the world.
Awesome. I look forward to hearing the entire record, and I really appreciate you.
I look forward to sharing.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear it, and I'm really excited you gave me so much of your time today. I really appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
Cheers.